All right. Well, we are live here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Metro. We really appreciate you being here today. I have very special guests. We have Scott and Angela Whitehurst here from our very own church, and they're here with us today. Welcome, Scott and Angela.
Hey, what's the name? How are you?
Good to see you, PP.
Thank you so much for joining us. And just to kind of give everyone watching just a little background to the both of you, Scott Whitehurst is an elder at Metro Community Church. He is actually our chair, our president. We're grateful for that. He's also, he works, he's a co-head at the graduate acting department for the new school. If you ever want to have an acting career, this would be the right school to go to. He also teaches at Columbia University at the School of Arts there as well. And when he has some spare time, he also does acting as well. Angela Robinson Whitehurst, she actually used to be on Metro staff. If you don't know that, she used to be our director of our creative arts ministry. Really miss you on staff, Ange. And she also leads worship at our church from time to time because she's a phenomenal worship leader. She actually left our staff several years ago because she is now one of the stars on the Tyler Perry's hit show, The Haves and the Have-Nots. How you doing, Angela?
I'm good. I'm hanging in.
I just have to tell you, that's a crazy show. That's a crazy show, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, they are both proud parents to Robbie, and I think he's probably sleeping right now. And they've been married for 23 years. Really, their marriage is truly a model in our church. And so I'm just so grateful that both of you are able to join us today. And before we kind of get started into the questions, what I love to do is I like to do these icebreakers. I actually learned this from Alex G. So is it cool for me to do some icebreakers so people can get to know you a little bit more?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. For you, Scott, favorite movie of all time?
Oh my goodness.
In terms of repetition, like you've just seen it over and over and over again.
The Godfather series.
Wow. Okay. How about you? How about you, Angela?
It's a musical, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't watch. I don't
You
know.
you just act in them. You don't necessarily watch them. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Favorite. If you could have one last meal before you die, what would it be?
What would you have?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken. Okay.
I'd have seafood. I think it'd be
Seafood.
lobster. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fantastic.
I'm
And
on
then
it. I'm out.
okay. Scott, did you play any sports?
I did.
What did you play?
I played varsity soccer.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
A long time ago.
All right. How about you, Angela? Did you play any sports? Track?
Hurdles.
What events?
Hurdles.
Oh, nice. Okay. So just be honest. What movie was that you guys watched that made like in the last couple of years that you felt like was probably the worst piece of acting you have ever seen? Like you just said, no more. I can't watch this anymore. You just turned it off. Did that ever happen to you guys?
Sure.
A movie that you watched that you just felt like, no, I can't watch this anymore. This is just too bad.
Oh, that movie we saw, but we can't say it.
Yeah, we can't.
You
You
say
can't?
Because we there are people that we know who
We
are
know
involved.
All right, can't make you call them out. All right, just say
Close to home.
Jean-Claude Van Damme. All right, Bloodsport or something like that. Okay. Growing up, did you have a Hollywood crush as a teenager? Who was your Hollywood crush?
Michael Jackson. I just wanted to have his babies.
All right, there you go. What about you, Scott?
Oh, there was a Hollywood crush. I don't really think I did.
All right.
Not like that. Mm-mm.
Well, she's right next to you, so you got
he
lucky.
was a priest growing up, so he had.
What's up with all you spiritual people? Like,
I know.
This is like a no-brainer for me, but all my friends have been asking, they're like, I didn't have one. I'm like, how could you not have a Hollywood crush?
True.
All right, you can be a priest. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So who's more competitive, Scott or Angela? Oh yeah. I see you. I see you at those Maven workouts. I see you calling them out all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
That's
All
good.
right. Oh man. Okay. So thanks again for joining us today. And I just kind of want to, Scott, I know you're teaching in the fall. What's going on? Are you guys going to have in-person classes, or are you guys still thinking about doing like?
No, both universities, I think, are going to begin with Zoom. The question now, they're definitely both going to begin with Zoom. The question is when we would go to in person.
Okay.
There is some chat that New School may go in January, in the spring. Columbia may Zoom the entire year.
Okay.
So much so we're even talking about maybe adding another semester for free for students to make up for in-person classes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something else.
Yeah.
All right. And just to let you all know, if you're watching, we're actually going to take your live questions. So if you do have a live question, make sure you write it up on the chat room. I will do my best to get to all of them. I can't promise I'll get to all of them, but I'll do my best to get to all of them. Angela, what about you? Is everything kind of on pause right now with the show and everything?
Yeah, everything's on pause. I mean, we have fortunately a season in the can, so we don't have to worry that much. But the entire industry has been on pause. As you know, the Broadway community is totally shut down. And the television industry in LA is supposed to be coming back next week. I'm not sure with what kind of safety precautions, but Tyler has laid out some really good safety precautions that feel good. So we'll see.
Okay, cool. So before we get into some of the stuff that I want to talk to you guys about, kind of want to share, first of all, I know both of you love Jesus. You love Jesus very, very much. Could you share with us just when was your first authentic experience with God?
You
want to go first?
You want to go first?
I was 13 or 14. I was still Roman Catholic. They had a retreat. You've been going to them, Moxanim. Only this one was a silent retreat. It probably was 2 days, which was a big deal for a preteen. But everything that I was hearing and everything that I was reading was just speaking to me deeply. And it was odd because I knew I was young, and yet it felt like it was speaking to a future self. That's the only way I can describe it. It was as if I was being asked to think of things in a more mature fashion, to go deeper. There's a certain acceptance when you're a young kid in church, and people give you a little leeway and that kind of thing. And in this regard, it was as if the Holy Spirit, Jesus, was just saying, I need you to just focus a little bit more. I need you to come closer to me, is a better way of putting it. I need you to mature a little bit. And I mentioned it to some of the priests, and they said, yeah, there's if you think of the Virgin Mary, if you think a lot of people in Scripture, they were very young when God first spoke to them. So think about it. They didn't push, but they just said, think about it. And they supported me. So I think that was the first time. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How about you, Angela?
Well, I had two encounters when I was young. When I was 10, I surprised my parents, and when I grew up Baptist, and when they said, if anyone wants to be baptized, come up here. So when I was 10, I got up on my own, walked up, and was baptized. I sort of knew what I was doing, but I definitely felt an encounter at that moment with God. Later on, my junior year in high school, I had a second encounter, and this was when I went to visit church with a friend of mine who had pursued me to come to church with her, come to church with me, and I did. And at that particular service, they invited people to come down who wanted to give their lives to the Lord. I thought I had done that when I went and got baptized when I was 10. So I was like, I got to do it again. But I did. And that particular encounter truly changed my life. So,
yeah. Wow. Okay. I got to ask this question from Jordan Nam, a young one. He's watching. He just said, when you both were kids, what did you want to be?
A teacher.
Teacher. Okay.
Yes.
Angela, then when did you know you wanted to be in Hollywood? Like, when did you know you wanted to be in acting?
Well, I knew that I loved acting when I was 10. My mother was directing a production. She was a high school English teacher, and she was over the drama department. So I had to sit in on her rehearsals. So I knew that I loved it and would love to do it, but I didn't know anybody who did it. So I really didn't. I thought that was something only people did that walked down the street and people spotted them and discovered them. I didn't really know it was something I could pursue. So that wasn't on my radar until later. But I loved it, being a teacher from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that. How about you, Scott?
So it's really, I'm a little strange in the regard, in the sense that I've always wanted to do what I do.
Okay.
But the joke for Angela is that I like black and white films more than she does. Whatever last film I saw, whatever the leading person was, that's what I wanted to be. And so if I saw a thing about science, I would get a little costume together and be walking around trying to be a scientist all day. If it was about a minister, I'd dress up like a minister and hold a Bible all day. And then eventually my grandmother said to me, oh no, you don't want to be those things. You just want to be the person who acts those things. And that's when it was sort of set off in my mind. That's what actors do.
Wow, you had a very good, like, vivid imagination, and just kind of
very much so.
Yeah,
very much so.
Still.
Nice. Awesome. So I want to ask you a question. So you guys have been a part of our church, your partners, your leaders in our church. Metro is a multi-ethnic community, but we have a large group of Asian people at Metro Community Church. Could I just ask you, just for those who are watching, why did you choose to attend and become like so deeply involved and help lead our church? What were some of the reasons why you decided to make Metro your home?
That is a wonderful question. Angela and I we've lived in Inglewood now for 10 years, and we lived in Fort Lee for 10 years before that.
Yeah.
And in Fort Lee, we commuted to a church in Brooklyn. Yeah. And it had all kinds of difficulties in terms of, not the church, but our travel to and from. And it was impossible to be involved more than Sunday service because it was so far away. Yeah. And we discussed that for a long time. When we moved to Inglewood, my cousin Sean said to me one thing. He said, find a church that's in your neighborhood. Find a church that you can actually, like when we were kids, you could walk to. And that way you can participate. So we looked around, and that's when we found you, Moksanim, online. We found you actually through a broadcast. And we visited, and we just fell in love with it. But we also, when we joined, we also were trying to fulfill a debt that we felt like we owed God. We said, we haven't participated actively. We know that's not right. Let's find a way to do that. We didn't know exactly how, but we just said, we got to open ourselves to participating fully. Make sure it's in the neighborhood. Make sure we participate fully. That's how we got it. Yeah.
Wow.
And we had both spent our season prior to that 10 years being very active in our churches. So the 10 years that we were commuting to Brooklyn, even though it was hard to be active, it was also just a season of receiving, of sitting back and just learning. And so we felt like we were doing what we were supposed to do in that season, but we knew that season was over and it was really time to pour out. Yeah. And we wanted a place to do that. I had grown up Baptist, Scott grew up Catholic, and we knew we didn't want to revisit. We wanted something new and fresh, and we came to Metro and loved it the first
moment, from the very first moment.
That's makes me so happy to hear that. We're talking to Scott and Angela, leaders here at Metro Community Church. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We do our best to get to every single one that you do ask. So could I just ask just a very honest question? I think, Scott, I asked you this at our partners meeting a couple of weeks ago. What, for both of you, what has been probably your greatest encouragement being at Metro, but what has also been kind of probably one of your greater discouragements at being at Metro?
The greatest encouragement has been, a lot of churches discuss diversity. Yeah. They have conversations about it. This is not, and then it sort of fades away as if it were a hope. It doesn't function that way at Metro. It really is something very important to the leadership, to you, Moksanim, to the pastoral staff, to everybody. So that part's very, and embracing cultures, which is very difficult. And if you look at the history of the church in America, you'd have to give everyone a failing mark at that. Yeah. There's just never been great success for any group, any particular denomination or non-denominational church getting great groups of people together. I think that sometimes we arrive at a place of comfort because we haven't had deep, deep, dark days and deep problems, but you arrive at a sort of an equilibrium, a kind of an evenness. And I wish that we would go to the next level. So the disappointment is more of a yearning, let's go further.
Yeah.
Let's really, beyond tolerance, beyond gentleness, beyond kindness and graciousness and grace, let's really care for each other. And the only way to do that in my mind is to know each other.
Yeah. Okay. How about for you, Angela?
I think my greatest encouragement has been community, your vision for diversity and for community. I think you along with the leadership and the staff of Metro have invested more into community than I've ever seen in a church. I've seen a lot of conversion emphasis in churches. I've seen a lot of missionary emphasis, but the emphasis that we put on community right where we are and serving this community in the way that we have the pantry and the Metro Life and anything we can do, the camp, the arts camp, it just really blessed me, because if we're gonna live here, it's a blessing to be a part of a church that's so committed to serving the community that we live in. And that's what we noticed first. And that's what we fell in love with first.
That's great.
And then my greatest disappointment, I would say we just haven't changed. I feel like we've been there 10 years. We had this race talk once, like 5 years ago. And we're back here, and it's almost like we didn't even have it. I remember it was, a very emotional time then as well. I remember there was like a mass exodus of the people who didn't want to deal with it. But I don't feel like much really changed. And that's a little disappointing. Well, not a little, that's a lot disappointing for me, because I feel like we've given a lot to help that. We make ourselves available. We answered any questions back then. And I feel like we're back. I get the same, like, I'm gonna really, do my best and I'm not hopeful because not much changed since that last time.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for keeping it real, because I really appreciate that. But what do you think then? What would you like to say to the people that are watching right now? Perhaps they were with us 5 years ago and they wanted to change, but perhaps maybe they haven't. What do you think could be like the one tangible thing that people in our church can do to really start living this out? Like the way you see it can be lived out. What's like maybe the one tangible thing you think we can participate in as a church, or as a people, individually, but also corporately, that we can begin to start living this out?
It's the thing you talk about all the time. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. It really is not a new message. It hasn't really been uncomfortable going to Metro, but I gave up traditions that I love. Because I think it's worth it. It's worth it to learn about a different culture. It's worth it to follow Jesus, no matter whether it's my tradition or not, and learn different traditions. And I watch my husband my son knows how to say hello and goodbye in Korean.
Oh, yeah.
Too. And I watch my husband learn the language and care enough.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I get a little care enough to learn about you.
Yeah.
I don't see the same thing. And when I say that, I just mean it's more than just having us for friends.
Yeah.
You really do have to do some work, and nobody can do that work for another person. It's not even in a book.
Yes,
I
right.
I can appreciate the reading lists and all of that, but it's not even really in a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, Moxanini, there's a thought that as long as I'm, kind and gracious to my Black brothers and sisters at church or to people in the world, I'm still really not, this is majority culture I'm speaking of at Metro. I'm not really involved in this dynamic between white folks and Black folks.
Yeah.
And I think if anything was proven with this last atrocity, no one's exempt from this.
Yeah.
This is a system we all participate in.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to have bad intentions. It doesn't mean you have good intentions. It means that we're participating. We support a police force that does damage to people.
Yeah.
And that you have the right and the obligation as a Christian citizen to say, that's not right. That's not right. And I have to protect people who may not look like me and may not be part of my culture, but they're my brothers and sisters, and I have to protect them. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean go out and denigrate the police. That's not that at all.
That's right. That's right.
But also filling, as my wife said, filling in for that history that's missing.
Yeah.
Because it's not written down. If you look for it in books, you're not going to find the true origin of where the police force was formed. You're not going to find that.
Yeah. And so for those that are watching here at Metro, I just want you to, because this is really great. It's more than just reading about books, about this stuff. I think what Scott and Angela is saying, it's about really building real relationships and be willing to go outside your comfort zone. Because we all sort of tend to default to that comfort. But how are we going to live outside of that and realize that this is an opportunity for us to grow in deeper love, learn and serve one another, and just be able to build real authentic relationships with one another. So I hope, Metro, that you will, that we together all would be able to do that and be very intentional about that going forward. So a question I have, some people, some Christians believe today that we should not preach about racial justice at church. What do you think about that?
I think that's wrongheaded from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think it's wrongheaded. Now,
why?
Well, I told my wife a while ago, I may have mentioned it to you, I've really been struggling with this justice word.
Yeah.
I've struggled with it because, Jesus's trial was not a just trial. He was sentenced to death unjustly.
Yeah.
And so, anytime man is involved with a system, there's going to be problems with it. But I'm deeply interested in righteousness, And so when you're preaching, not racial justice, but racial righteousness, you're talking about morally proper acts that are justifiable. You're talking about the treatment of all human beings, all children of sons and daughters of God being treated equally and well and lovingly. And it's also, you're also preaching that in this crazy world of ours, there are human beings who don't view Black men and women as sons and daughters of God.
Yeah.
Full stop. They just don't. And there are arguments about our humanity that are on the internet that people will articulate.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, I don't think you should preach that, you're saying, I don't think that those issues that I just named are wrong. Right. I know that sounds strong, but that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Where else would you do it?
Yeah.
I mean, when when people are not being treated well, it's many, we could just start listing stories in the Bible where, you know, God sent the prophet to deliver a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is the place. We should be doing it before anyone is doing it in the church. So if you're not talking about fairness and righteousness and justice for all people, then you're not doing the work of Jesus.
Yeah.
Because that's what he was about.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. The reality of the death of an unarmed Black man dying at the hands of law enforcement, or like Ahmaud Arbery just going for a jog, is something unfortunate. That's nothing new in this country. It's a narrative that is centuries old. What is it about George Floyd's death that has ignited this kind of response, not just here in the States, but even all over the world? I mean, even in Korea, they're covering it on the news. They have Black Lives Matter translated in Korean. I know like celebrities in Korea are donating money to Black Lives Matter. What do you think it is about the death of George Floyd that has literally ignited this, not just here in this country, but all over the world?
Number one is seeing it. You can see someone beat up and then find out they died. You can hear about it, but to see someone literally before your eyes, and the 4 people who are being paid to protect you do nothing, and to hear citizens going, man, he's not breathing, and no one even stopped. No one has a heart enough to even look to see it. They check his pulse and then they just still stay there. You can see that that man to them had no value. But people are more compassionate than that. And so while that man to them had no value, because that's sort of what the relationship with the police has been with Black people. A lot of their abuse has been about value and where they place value and what group of people they find valuable, which is why they can take a man that shoots up a church to get a hamburger. Because, you know, that's my cousin. That reminds me of my cousin. He's you know, he's family. He's just, you know, he's a little, so we can say that. But if someone in the Black community is a little, then he's an animal.
Yeah.
And when you don't have value, you don't get up when you know he doesn't have a pulse. The world saw that. And the world is more compassionate.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
And the world was home.
And the world
was right. That's true.
The world was home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was also, Mohsin, the length of time. It wasn't a quick broken neck and gone, which would be just as horrible.
Yeah.
It took a long time. It was almost 10 minutes. It's a long time. And we don't do that with people who are sentenced to death.
We don't do that with animals.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
So that was I think that was the change that people needed to see, that Black people have been trying to articulate for a long time.
Yeah.
There was no video evidence.
That's right. That's right. Got a question here from Tasia. She says, what do you say to other Black people who say that Christianity is a tool to control Black people? Example, that in the past, Christians have used the Bible to justify slavery, right? And so, and the Bible was the only book that was given to slaves, you know, back in the day. So, how would you answer that question? Some Black people are saying Christianity is a tool to control Black people. I have friends who actually say that they no longer will call themselves evangelicals anymore. That they just will not. Black friends, they just will not. Yep.
Right. I think that, you know, you have to make a distinction between faith and a personal relationship with God in which I'm not being controlled by anybody but God, his will for my life, and how the people aren't wrong if scripture and Bible is being attached to political gain or politics or worldly behavior. I mean, in slavery, but also in slavery, slaves couldn't read. So they were only being told those chapters of scripture that had to do with slaves obeying their masters.
Yeah.
You can always find one little bit of holy writ to justify almost anything if you take it completely out of context. But I'm not being controlled by anybody. I'm in a personal relationship. I'm only answering to one person. I'm a part of a body, a believer's body, yes. But it also has to do with, then my question to them is, well, individual Black person, how deeply have you studied your Bible? Without anybody telling you anything, not being told by something by a pastor, because maybe that pastor was out of bounds. I don't know. But what have you done in your word, in your study time? And rarely when we have these discussions have I found out that person's been real deep in their word.
Also, my mother and Scott's grandmother used to always say, when we would say, so-and-so said this about me, they would always say, well, consider the source. So in this situation, you have to consider the source. It wasn't Christians, it was white Christians. And they were needing to keep their flock, I won't even call them employees, their slaves in check. And what better way to do that than to find one scripture, take it out of context, and tell them, yeah, you want to please God, you're supposed to obey your masters. We do that sometimes as parents. We say things that are sort of not true to get our kids to do what we want them to do. So no, you have to read and study for yourself, be in relationship with God. And
okay. Yeah. All right. These questions are coming in like hotcakes right now. Okay. So what would you like? How would you like to respond to people, and just be honest, who say all lives matter during these times?
Simple. All lives weren't brought here in 1619. Unlike any other group, and I'm not putting us above any group, I'm saying unlike any other group, we are not immigrants. We didn't choose to come here. My chosen word is we are imports. We were goods brought here, right? So if you hold us in captivity, in enslavement for 180 years before we got to freedom, the difficulty was no one then told the master, those that you used to think of as goods are actually human beings and have to be treated well.
Wow.
No one ever made that adjustment. They just said, now you're free. What made it worse was now you're free with nothing. No goods, no land, a little money, nothing. Just go, which made it impossible. Because, as my wife said, value has never been ascribed to us. No one ever was taught this Black body has value. From God down, value. Black people have been murdered, massacred, killed over and over and over again along the lines of the Native Americans. Well, it's the same journey. Sometimes we fell into killing the Native Americans trying to get our freedom. That was our mistake. But when we say when people jump to all lives matter, it is a proven fact by the behavior of government, local government, national government, the police force, that white bodies matter, that Asian bodies, people, you can see it and how people respond. When we say Black Lives Matter, we're trying to join that group of people who have value. We're
trying to join all lives.
We're trying to join all lives. We haven't gotten there yet. How do you know? Because of all the bodies on the ground.
That's right.
That's how you know. So that's the response. It should be self-evident that all other lives matter in the way it falls out.
That's right. That's probably one of the best explanations I've ever heard on that. So for those who are watching, it might be good for you to rewind it. Make sure you share this with your other friends and family so they can learn deeper, especially those who use that rhetoric that all lives matter. Somebody else asked this question. Do you think our Asian families are more reactive now because of how they were treated due to the virus?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit more? Yeah.
Well, I had a few people, a few dear friends, write me during the time that Asians were being attacked and on the street, and say, "Now I get it." And it hasn't happened to me, but I have a fear of it going out, and now I get it.
Mm.
And I was able to comfort them. I was able to come alongside my friends. I was able to be an ally. I
Mm.
was able to be an ally because I was already in relationship.
Yeah. There
It's
you go.
very difficult to be an ally and you're not even in relationship, because then you say a lot of just things by rote, like, "Oh, I'm going to do what I can,"
Mhm.
and so I was able to be an ally because I was in relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's changed. I think it's changed the way my Asian friends now view where we are now,
Mm, mm, mm.
because they have somewhat experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the response in the Asian community during COVID is one of disappointment and surprise.
Mm.
There have been microaggressions in terms of racism towards Asians, microaggressions, but nothing over a sustained period of time, just violent. And, the Chinese earlier, but that was before Koreans arrived. The
Yeah.
Chinese certainly went through it, but that had dissipated. The expectation was we came to the country, we're doing very well, we participate in the country very well, and we've idealized the majority culture of whites. And I think people were just frankly deeply surprised
That's right.
that why would you think such an ignorant thing? And worse, why would you be violent towards me when I've never caused you harm?
I've never done anything wrong.
That's
And
right.
this is the sort of thing that most people don't understand about the Black Lives Matter movement, about the
Yeah.
police brutality, is that there's always been this thing about, what did he do wrong?
Correct.
Mm.
What were they doing wrong to get arrested? And I think for the first time, the Asian community saw that you cannot do anything wrong and still be attacked and
Yeah.
still be profiled
Mm.
just because of who you are, just because of your race.
Yeah.
And I think that was it's hard to wrap your brain around something when you pride yourself on being a good, upstanding person.
That's right.
And when you realize bad things happen to good, upstanding people sometimes, and you don't deserve it. And that's what we've been living with our whole lives.
That's it.
You're so right. I think that, it's horrible what's happened, to some of the people in the Asian community, but this could be one of the greatest gifts we could have ever received, because we finally understand a bit more. We don't understand fully, but we understand a bit more. I was having dinner with a friend of mine, who's a Black friend of mine, and he just said, I am not happy about what's happening to Asian people, but he just looked at me and said, "Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. Now you'll understand a little bit of what it's like to be Black in this country." And it was really a deep conversation we had, and just kind of helped me to realize again, this could actually be not a curse, but could be a gift to the Asian community, so that we too can hopefully come together with our Black brothers and sisters and unite together and fight this injustice, or this cause of righteousness that God has called us to. I got a question here from somebody that you love very much, Shirley. She said, could you share, first of all, she says she loves you both very much. Could you share a time when you two were not valued because of the color of your skin? And how did you overcome it? Who or what or where did you get the strength from to overcome that prejudice?
Well, when you ask either one of us that, we can just list them.
Sure.
We would be here. I mean, it's just, it's not one thing. It happens all the time. I remember going to a dry cleaners recently, and I picked up my things and came home, and a very nice dress was missing. And I went back and I said, oh, I don't have my orange dress. And the man pretty much said that I was lying. And I was like, no, I want my dress. And he spoke to me like I assumed he spoke to everybody in the neighborhood. That's what it felt like. It was like, he told me, no, that's all that was there. That's all I brought there. And I felt like this little, because there was nothing I could do about it, really. I didn't have a picture that I brought the dress there. I didn't. And I said, no, I know that I brought he said, no, you didn't. And he pretty much dismissed me and went to the next person.
Wow. And
I came home and I told Scott, we won't be going back there. I don't know what else I could do. I'm walking, I'm pacing at this point. I don't know what else I can do. And I ended up writing a letter to emailing them. And someone wrote me back, we don't have the dress. There's no dress here. About 2 months later, they found the dress.
Wow.
And emailed me and told me they found the dress. And I went and picked up the dress. And I'm sure that the gentleman, the owner, apologized. And I couldn't even look at him because he didn't even treat me like a human being, which most people will say, I'm so sorry. Let us look around for it. Let us do. He dismissed me like I totally was trying to steal a dress. And it was horrifying. And, so that was one time, and that was recent, but we can just, go down the list. So.
I think the other part of your question, of Shirley's question, is Black parents are aware of what's coming, and they do their very best to protect their children from the world for as long as they can, at the same time preparing their children for the world. Preparing them. That's why the moms and dads give the talk regarding the police. That's why, my grandmother used to say, make everybody officer friendly, because you never know when you might need help or you might need them to think a certain way about you. So she was always very friendly with police, because if she saw them and make me wave and all that, because she was thinking if there was a need in the future, they would know you in some kind of way. If when I was little, if we saw encounters or difficulties and they were clearly racist in nature, there was always a chat about it. There was always a stand and watch. Now it would be with a phone to record it, but stand and watch to learn from it. It was always a teaching moment. It wasn't a runaway, this is horrible for you. It was a teaching moment. Angela and I, the joke was, we always started with Robbie. By the time I was 3.5, I could name my address, my parents' full names, I'm talking middle names, my grandmother's full name, everybody's address, and the telephone numbers. Because I used to think they just wanted me to know this because all kids knew it. No, they didn't want a little Negro boy in the 60s who got separated from his parents. If I didn't know this information, nobody was going to extend themselves to help me. So at least if I knew this information, I could communicate it to somebody. I think that's how we've always built in this extra armor, this extra information, to the ability that we were able to. And that's a level, depending on who you are and where you're from. But it was always a sense of childhood is growth, but it's also preparation, because the world is not necessarily going to embrace you.
There was this other instance, and I think I've told this story, but it's worth repeating. There was a huge blizzard, and we were living in Fort Lee, and a huge blizzard. And I was driving home from the theater because theater doesn't shut down for anything but COVID-19. That didn't shut down, so I had a show that night. And when I pulled up to the house, I had to dig myself a parking space out. So I had a lot of groceries. I was trying to get out, and I was going behind my house, and the cops pulled up and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm home. I have to dig myself out." He asked me everything but, "Can I help you, ma'am?"
Yeah.
Right.
So Angela, how do you not go from zero to blowing your gasket?
I
Like,
want to live.
You want to live, and that's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, I think that night when he said, "What are you doing around here?" and followed me to the back of my house to get the shovel, and followed me, stood and watched me shovel a parking space and said nothing. I want to live. Of course, I want to say, "Are you going to help me?" White people get to do that. They get to go off on the police, and we don't get to do that. So I didn't. Scott had to call the precinct when
when I got home, and I got home later, and so I went ballistic because I just thought, first of all, it's freezing outside.
Yeah.
And I asked for the detectives, and I said, what home breakers have you ever experienced that go out in blizzards?
Yeah.
Who's breaking into homes in Fort Lee in the middle of a blizzard?
Yeah.
And I said, and why would she say she lives somewhere? And then finally, what the breakthrough was, I said, "Are you married, sir?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, how would you like it if your wife was outside in the cold, stopped by one of your officers, not helped with her groceries, questioned in the cold on a night like this?" And he said, "I wouldn't like it very much." And he took the details because of that. He asked who it was, and we gave him the information, and we did receive a letter in response.
So Metro, I hope you got this. When I asked Angela, how did you not go from zero to blow your gasket? She says something, "I want to live." And that's just the reality of every Black person who encounters law enforcement. I don't know if I have blown my gasket at a police officer when he pulled me over, like, erroneously. I said I didn't break the law. I didn't do anything wrong, and he didn't believe me. And I did yell at him, and I said, "I want your badge number now." And of course, he didn't give it to me. But the fact that I remember just driving home that time when I said that, and I just said, "Yeah, I can do that. And I don't have to worry about getting shot." It's a different kind of a world. So thank you for sharing that. I hope for everyone who knows you in our church, that truth that you want to live shows you again of the disadvantage that Black people have when it comes to dealing with law enforcement, because there's like a guilty sign no matter what. Yeah. I gotta get to maybe one or two more that we gotta wrap this up. What age, Coco wants us to know, what age did you realize that the both of you are going to be treated differently in this world because of the color of your skin? What age was that?
I grew up down south, so probably earlier than most, but in junior high, I was a part of desegregating a school. And so the school bus rarely came, and we had to get to school the best way we could. And walking down the street to that school, we almost every day got taunted, "N-word, go home, N-word, go home." And so, I knew from a very early age, but my parents felt like I needed to have the experience. They felt like I could handle the experience inside the school. I got along with everyone and had a wonderful time. It was just outside of the school that was tough.
Yeah. I think I was 6 or 7 And my father was a full professor at Howard University Medical School. My dad is a pharmacologist, so he's a PhD, so he's a doctor. And we got pulled over. He and I, he picked me up, and we got pulled over by this white policeman. And I'm used to going through the medical school and hearing people call my father professor or doctor. That's what I'm used to. That's how I was raised. And he said, "Where are you two boys headed?" And I'm 6. I know I'm a boy. My father's a grown man and he's a doctor. He's not a boy. And I knew I'd seen enough. I knew that was wrong. But I saw my father sort of knuckle up on the steering wheel and still answer. Because he's got his child. He's got not only himself to keep alive, he's got to keep me alive. And I didn't understand that part, but he was very quiet on the ride home. He was very quiet. I knew that. I mean, I could see, as much as a 6-year-old can understand hurt in your father, that was when I knew, okay, this is not the same.
Yeah. Our very own Pastor Sunita asked this question. She says, "We have the power to live freely in Christ, but how do you personally live freely under the weight of racism?"
Tremendous question.
Yeah, of course, Sunita would ask that question.
Only Christ. It is, we've talked a lot tonight about the police, but that's a little bit of the story. I think that racism exists. We saw with Ahmaud Arbery just jogging, and racism exists in Inglewood, New Jersey, and so it's so in your face. And I think the only thing about this season that is a little bit of a blessing is that we've been saying it for so long.
Right.
It's such a hard thing. If anybody has known something that was a truth and nobody believed them and they keep saying it, they know how difficult that is.
Yeah.
So to finally maybe be believed, that means a lot. And listen, we're not saying, our people are perfect and we would never take a dress from a dry cleaners or whatever it is. We're not saying that.
No.
But the way that we're treated is as if white and Asian people never take the dress. And unfortunately, businesses are being robbed of so many dresses because they're only watching us.
Yeah.
So if they would just, if people in general would just understand that we're human, and yes, there are thieves and muggers and good people and bad people in every race. So to put that label on just one race is an extremely wrong thing to do.
Right.
And I find no freedom in that.
Yeah.
So, the only freedom I have is in Jesus.
That's right.
The rest of it is, it keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know, my attempt at fixing it has been many things. It's been getting a college degree. It's been trying to be as successful as I could in my career. It's been trying to be a really good person.
Yeah.
With exceptions, but it's been, really working, and none of it helps this one thing.
No.
Yeah.
And this one thing happens from really good people too. I've experienced racial insensitivities at church. So it doesn't always come from bad people.
Mhm.
You know, it's just something that's deep within our culture, within our country, that great people don't know how not to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can't just say it's the police. It really is a, it's the world that has been given to not value Black people. And until we get that straight,
Yeah.
then I won't be free.
That's
I
right.
don't have a sense of freedom around that.
Mm.
I have two thoughts, and the last one is, the first one is off of what my wife said about just blaming the police. You can think of the police really as a physical manifestation of unconscious desire of society. People don't acknowledge the desire, but the thing is, we really don't know Black people, we don't trust Black people, and it's your job to control them in whatever way you see fit. It's a manifestation of a desire. It's not just individuals acting in a certain way, it's systemic. So they're acting out on something that people have agreed on privately. And you know they've agreed on it privately because they haven't publicly said, stop doing that. We don't want that anymore.
Mm.
But in terms of it's great, and it's this. I have to go back to 1619. My grandmother didn't use the word ancestors, but you always would say, remember who you are, remember where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
Remember who you are, remember where you're from. And that I got to go to just college and graduate school. My parents got to go to college and graduate school. There are so many people in my ancestry who didn't get to do 1/10 of what I was able to do. And it's painful every day, and it smarts, but it's not a third of what they experienced. It's not enslavement. I've never been beaten. It's not that. It's wrong. It's unrighteous. It's uncaring. It's unloving. But what carries me through is I'm going to live out the dreams of people in my bloodline that never got that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold my head up and walk through a university when I know 100 years ago they couldn't have done that. They couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And there were times when I would complain about things people would say to me in college, and my grandmother would kiss me on the forehead and said, "But you're there.
Mm.
She said, you win when you finish.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Your revenge is you finish.
That's right.
You keep going. Your revenge is they can't stop you, because they could stop me 75 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Physically, they could stop me. You just keep going for all the people, and I know it's hard. You keep going for all the people who prayed you into existence. Because the reason we're where we are is a whole lot of Black folks prayed for us way before we came into existence.
That's right. That's right. Wow. Angela, I do got to ask, that dry cleaners, was it a Korean business? Was that dry cleaners a Korean business?
Yes.
On behalf of Koreans, I apologize. On behalf of that dry cleaners owner, I apologize for that. That is.
I wanted to say, you don't know my brothers and sisters will come and get you. No.
You should have called me. My North Korean side would have came out there. Yeah, that is so bad. But I found myself in this interview. Oh shoot! I hope it wasn't a Korean owner. But then I was like, I gotta ask and apologize on behalf of our people, because yeah, definitely.
Well,
Yeah,
we all have had to apologize on.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Not,
Right.
We wouldn't we don't lump people in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully.
It was an individual owner.
But I think that's why it hit me so hard, because I do feel like family.
That's right. That's right.
So I was like, oh,
yeah.
He's not treating me like family. And I'm
That's
family,
right.
you know?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So but again, you're not, it doesn't, back in the day, I don't know, we are known to dress up for church, right?
Yeah.
And I know when you guys think of going to like a Baptist church and all that, you think, oh, I better dress up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, back in the day, we had to dress up to go out because then maybe they won't bother you.
Yeah.
If you look nice, maybe they won't, maybe, just maybe, they won't harass you if you look nice.
Yeah.
So we had to dress up. And so, do you know, I even said to myself after that encounter, well, I did have on sweats.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's learned.
It's
Wow.
learned.
Yeah.
And I had to catch myself, like, I get to have on sweats going to.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
But it's learned because experiences I would have in college, and I'd say something to my mother, and she said, "Well, what did you look like?"
Wow.
I'm like, what? Did you have a suit jacket on? Why would I have a suit jacket on?
Yeah.
No, the other kids had a suit jacket on, and she would always say, "You're not the other students. You're not the other students."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, wow.
Wow. Okay. I got one last question as we wrap up here. In 5 years, where do you hope Metro will be in terms of racial reconciliation, racial righteousness?
I pray that we matter enough, that we will not be here, not be having basic discussions about whether I didn't know racism was that rampant.
Yeah.
I pray we're not there. I pray that we will have accepted that it was a thing, that it was a terrible thing, and then we can move to healing. I've had many conversations with why people were racist. I remember I had a conversation with one of our church members who said, and let me just say, I hear from a lot of our church members. I remember from the beginning, people would say to me when I would talk about their parents, and I'm really close to my family, so I like to talk about parents, and they would say very easily with no, oh yeah, you know, my parents are racist. Like that wouldn't make me go, okay. If that sentence doesn't precede a but, I am doing some work not to be. If the but doesn't come, then I have to assume
that you are too. Yeah.
That you are too, because you don't erase it by osmosis. It doesn't just go away.
Yeah.
So I'm praying that this history of parents that are racist can really be dealt with, and people can really do the work and care enough. I'm not, I don't know. I'm not saying Scott is much more hopeful. We have a lot of very deep conversations about it. And I had a very strong hope for diversity in these 10 years, thinking that it was a thing to pursue.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anymore. I think diversity only works if everybody wants it. If everybody doesn't want it and it doesn't go both ways, then it becomes assimilation for the minority person.
Yeah.
They pretty much just assimilate into the world. It's not diversity at all.
Yeah.
And so I pray for true diversity.
Yeah.
That is my hope for Metro, that we will be truly diverse. And a truly diverse world is when we can look at each person from their culture and know that they have a culture. Care about what that culture is, and be just as invested in knowing about experiencing that culture as I am about knowing about and experiencing. So, true diversity would be my wish.
Thank you.
True diversity.
That was profound. Thank you. Thank you. Elder Scott, anything you want to say? What is your vision 5 years from now?
5 years from now, no more discussions about explorations about pain and fear. Racism causes pain. It's painful.
Yeah.
To be slighted. It's painful. And encounters with the authorities, whom we need. Let's not be confused. You have to have authorities. You have to have the police. There's crime everywhere, even in Black neighborhoods. That's all true. But at this point, it can't be unclear to anybody that Black people fear the police.
Yeah.
Because certain encounters go so far, they end in death. It's fearful. So what you end up is avoidance. It's like having an abusive parent. It's like having an abusive spouse. You just avoid them because you're just afraid what might go wrong.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, as Angela was speaking, I was thinking about one of my wedding vows. And I realized that it might be applicable to this discussion, to our church life, and to friendship, really. I thought it really had to do with marriage, but it might have to do with friendship. And one of my vows was, I said, I vow to make what's important to you more important than what I want. The most important thing. You mean so much to me. I will make what you want the most important thing to me. And I think that that's the nature of true friendship. You know the person and love the person so well that what they love, you love, and what hurts them, even though it may not affect you directly, deeply hurts you. So I'm looking for that connection among all the cultures at Metro, that we know each other so well, so that if something pains the Vietnamese at the church, it pains me.
Yeah.
That what hurts people either directly from South Korea or people who are second gen, it hurts me because I know it. And I can look in their eyes and say, who hurt you? What happened to you, brother? I want that from my fellows.
Yeah.
And I also want a sense of, we need you not just to love us and know us, but frankly, to protect us.
Yeah.
To protect us. Because one Korean brother or sister coming up and just videotaping a cop in an encounter could be the difference between life and death, because they won't do things in front of cameras as much anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you just walk by and say, well, I don't mean that person any harm, but I have no issue here, like the Good Samaritan. This is not my issue.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So we're talking about not feelings and thoughts anymore, but actions, deep love, deep friendship. This is for all of us, not just saying one-sided. This is for all of us, because that's when you're united. It's multiple cultures, but then they're united in love and heart.
Wow. Well, listen, I think we can go on forever, but I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you two are quite busy. You have a lot going on, and I know that it's not easy to keep talking about this. So thank you for making the sacrifice for our church. Thank you for sharing your heart and your experience and your hopes and dreams for Metro, but also the sadness also that comes with being a part of a church like ours as well. So thank you. Love you two very much. And
the joy, let me just say, the joy outweighs the sadness.
All right. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you. And everyone who asked a question, they always ended it with, I love you both very much. So I just want you to know that you are so deeply loved. So thank you so much for watching. Folks, thank you for joining in and tuning in this week. We're grateful for that. Tune in next Monday. We'll have another guest on, and we're excited about it. I believe next week is going to be Kevin Butcher. He'll be joining us next week. All right, so join us next week for that. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Thank you. We love you guys.
Yep.
Thank you.